the convenience copy idea just happens, and it's kind of like, just snacking just happens, or skipping going to the gym just happens, or all sorts of, things just happen. And you go, yeah, I'm human. Like I got free will and I can do it's things happen. So yeah, so the idea of saying, well, the cure is motivation and discipline and all this kind of stuff equally applies from going to the gym as it does to information management.
Welcome to the Enterprise Intelligence Podcast with CEO of Shiny Docs, Jason Cassidy, and VP Customer Success, Davey Slimman. How are you gentlemen this morning?
Very good, Steve. Yeah, good to see you again. We spent a good morning looking at some marketing materials, and certainly that's where I'm gonna start along that vein today, Davey.
Yeah, sure, sounds good. I love marketing stuff. I should have,
sure.
if I could do it all over again, I probably still wouldn't be a marketer, but I do find it fascinating. Oh,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, marketing is psychology. Yeah. There's all sorts of technology and all sorts of experience that goes into it, but it's the idea of helping people see themselves using your product or enjoying your product.
It's fascinating.
And it is.
So let's do it.
It totally is. So here's something that we've discovered, and it's our customers have discovered, and I'm going to throw out it's provocative hypothesis as part of this. So with one of our customers, we just filmed a success story. Yep. They're quite happy that they bought us for, like they had, like everybody else. It's a municipality. They have content all over the place, and they wanted to have records compliance. Yep. And everybody has diminishing budgets for this type of thing because it doesn't really affect the business. It's a risk mitigation. So nobody really wants to spend money on it. So our pitch was, rather than move it anywhere, of course they can have stuff in SharePoint, they can have stuff in different locations, and of course they have file shares. It's great. Our pitch was, don't spend all of your money on IT, doing IT back office things and labeling boxes. Spend your money on making your end user experience better, that they can securely find the information. That's your highest priority, is making sure that they securely find the information. They can validate that this is indeed what they're looking for. And the part of the experience of interviewing the staff, like, of course, we interview the CIO, we interview the head of legal, which is fantastic. And the two that really I liked best was the fire chief, standing in Class A uniform, standing in front of their rig, saying, I hate the idea of another IT app.
Yep.
Just pooping on the idea. And however, like a good citizen, I clicked on this thing, and what I found was all of the information that I care about, that our town has, was right there. I searched, and it was just like Google, and I just found the stuff that I need to do my job. So he literally says, I ran around the office showing people this thing.
That's amazing.
So I'm thinking, what fire chief does that? So it's almost the same. So the fire chief who may or may not even know the policy individual who's their head of policy, and one of the big things that he looks after is the heritage homes in the neighborhood and heritage buildings. Making sure that, like, if he decides or his group decides whether or not, if you have a facade that you want to change, but it's a heritage building, then they work with you to make sure that it maintains whatever quality that they want while you modernize. I think that's pretty cool. It's let's not debate whether or not it's that's the thing. Either way, this person needs information about properties. They need information about laws that apply, and they have it. So that was their same feedback. It's like, man, I can find exactly what I need about the properties. I can find exactly what I need about our historical precedents. I just find what I need. Yeah. None of them said it's the proper record series of the file plan or,
shocking.
Like, I'm so happy that we cleaned up our data. None of them said anything about that. So this is my provocative statement, is that a successful information management program should be exclusively measured first by people's ability to benefit from that program, people's ability to find
Yeah.
information and confirm its accuracy
Yeah.
better. And then, of course, you need to check all the boxes for compliance and governance and all that. It's otherwise you're a bit of a fail. And this is my last piece before I invite you to talk. I propose that the exact same work to make sure that the information might be properly labeled or automate the process of ingesting information and understanding information for the purposes of compliance is exactly the same work that makes the search better. But if you don't start with the search, if you don't start with the secure ability for people to find the information that they need, you'll kind of forget about it and you'll just focus on labeling the boxes, and then you won't get the budget. So so that's my thesis that I'll put out there to you, Davey Slimmin. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I love it, and I'm a little bit I'm at a bit of an advantage over the listener here in the sense that I know some of the backstory of what we're talking about here. But what I love about this is that it flips the narrative of the records managers in the basement, in the cellar by the furnace. Toiling away in some records room, it flips the whole story upside down and starts with the end user experience, the experience of the fire chief or somebody in the city or the municipality who's doing their work, getting benefit from the information management effort that has occurred because it's right in front of them. And I think, like, if it isn't called out in the videos that were recorded, I think in their gut what they're also saying is, this allows me to serve the constituents better. It allows me to serve the citizens better. I am better at my job as a fire chief because of this, and therefore the citizens of this municipality get better service from me. And so, yeah, like, you're absolutely right. Like, tracing it all the way back to, like, did you have a compliant records management and information governance policy? That's like table stakes. Like, that's what you expect to be true. But it's the act of doing all that stuff that makes this incredible search experience and this incredible kind of UX user experience shine. So yeah, no, I love it. It's I wonder, have people, like, I wonder why are we just coming to this now is what I'm trying to say. Like, and I don't mean we Shiny Docs, I mean we as in the industry. Like, was it fear that, like, oh gosh, like, we can't possibly put this in the hands of everybody, we can't possibly expose this to people? Or was it, I don't think that was it, by the way. I'm gonna shoot down my own idea. I think that in the past it was just like every other discipline out there in the world. It was perceived to be such highly specialized stuff that, oh, you wouldn't understand. That's not your domain. That's not your interest. The records managers are going to deal with this. The information governance people are going to deal with this. You don't have to worry about it. But to your point earlier, the appetite for that has just sort of disappeared. The appetite of spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on these giant RM solutions has dissipated, and so this is where things have moved. I applaud it. I'm excited by it, and I'm a little sad that we didn't get to it sooner as a society.
Well, and I'm going to throw out is something that it is it's going to be unwelcome in the conversation,
No,
but
brilliant.
it's a reality. Is people are looking to automate good enough now.
Yeah.
And that's something that we used to have people who would work their entire life at the meatpacking plant and get the watch. And we've covered this before, get the watch after 25 years and then retire with a pension and all that kind of stuff. And there was room for everybody. Warehouses had no automation, no robots or whatever. In fact, like mechanical manufacturing back in the 1920s, you would have to feed the horses because they're the ones who were trotting
Yep.
out to start the flywheel in the morning that all the machines run off of. And now we've completely mechanized all
Mm.
that. It's so when you look at an Amazon warehouse or whatever, there's all sorts of robotics in there, and then people supplement the robotics. It's not the other way
Mhm.
around. And that's what's happening to information
Yeah.
management, rightfully, because the records manager, the information governance professional, has an important role to play, but it's not labeling boxes. It is not. It's if they think that that's their job, that then it's trouble, because that's completely already automated.
Mm-hmm.
Good enough for people to find the
Mm-hmm.
information, and that, quite frankly, all that matters.
Yeah.
Is like the compliance is too hard to keep up with. It's hard to demonstrate that I've labeled every box properly, but we create far too much information across a variety of
Mm-hmm.
sources for us to say that I'm going to one by one by one by one put it someplace where it's safe. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
gone. What matters is, en masse, do we have enough automation in place that we can en masse
Yeah.
manage it, have the
Yeah.
automations manage us? So
Yeah.
this is the trick that is making us win with each of the customers, that even the customers didn't know at first, is we're doing a good enough job of the back end, grouping the stuff together and labeling
Yeah.
the stuff and moving stuff that might be high privacy or high sensitivity. And then what we're left with is the records manager's job is to make sure that the labels are accurate and that they're compliant in the back end, but most importantly, that the information is securely available to people via the
Mm-hmm.
search, which is the exact same experience. Like, it's exactly the same index of understanding of information that we're using to govern the data. So there's still room for the human, but the human's job is to touch what the robot is doing. It's not to be a superior robot. They can't keep up.
Yeah, and it's funny because that last point that you just raised is something that we've been like inching towards for quite a long time. And the term that I hear a lot, and you've probably heard dozens of times, is defensible disposition, which is, does your records management plan, does your information governance, do your information governance policies support the defensible disposition of your content to the extent that it would stand up in court, so that you could stand up in court and say, look, is my information management and governance policy perfect? No, it's not. But here's what it is. Here are the rules that we had. Here's how we followed them. And here's evidence showing that we followed them. And that's it. Like, that's the end. Because, like, at that point, no judge is going to necessarily chastise or penalize or persecute anybody if you can demonstrate each of those things. He's not going to say, is your information governance policy perfect? And is it executed upon perfectly every single time? Never. It's, did you defensively dispose of data that you were entitled to, or content that you were entitled to dispose of? Cool, good stuff. And so, as I say, we've been inching slowly towards that for kind of decades. But I think it's almost like an acknowledgement on the part of the courts and on the part of any kind of auditing and compliance exercise. It's an indication and an acknowledgement of that fact, that's where the burden of proof has landed. So yeah, no, I think this is kind of weirdly about time, and also weirdly it's taken us a long time to get here. I'm also, like, one of the things I think this about me, that, and maybe Steve doesn't, but I'm also really kind of, in addition to being a closet interested in marketing, I've always been kind of closet interested in HR, people experience type stuff. I always thought that, again, if I had to start over, maybe that's something I would focus on, because I love working with people. I love figuring out how they tick and, what motivates them and that kind of stuff. And this whole topic that you've raised this morning ties to this other thing that I've long believed, which is that the experience of an employee is directly linked to the experience of a customer. You cannot have amazing customer experience if you don't also have an amazing employee experience. In fact, employees who are miserable, who have terrible tools that don't work, that don't help them do their jobs, they deliver absolutely dreadful experience to the customer. So when you put a tool in front of an employee of a municipality or an employee of a financial institution that is a delight to use, that helps them easily find things, that gets them excited about doing their job, it flows over to the customer, the client, who in the case of the municipality is the citizenry, right? So I think, that's the other, kind of win out of this whole thing, is that the easier and better and happier the employees are doing these tasks, the greater the value of the experience for the client, right? So in this case, the citizen. So
Yeah. In my experience is our customers who get that, who have identified that the end user experience is the most important thing, even though maybe that's not why they bought us in
right,
the first place,
yeah,
have no problem justifying the expense of the program. And quite frankly, the program isn't
right,
that expensive. It starts somewhere around
right,
10 grand per year, and then it goes up to maybe 150 or something like that for your biggest
right,
programs. Or, I mean, and then we got slightly bigger ones at like billions of documents, which is kind of reserved for super big companies. But these aren't $1 million
yeah,
programs. And when you think of $1 million program, that's only like 7 or 8
yeah,
employees,
right,
and we're doing way more work than 7 or 8 employees. Like, it's when we think of some of our biggest customers, we might have 30 or 40 virtual
right,
machines who are complete nonstop chugging
right,
through billions of documents and applying all of the rules. And so the humans just go in a couple times a week and go, I'm going to tweak a
yeah,
rule. I'm going to
right,
tweak a rule. That's what the records manager does. And their impact now is broadcast to literally billions of pieces of
mm-hmm.
information. And that's, you just can't do that manually, and you can't do that by putting the right custom column in SharePoint, or adding a records
Yeah,
management thing to an ECM. That's just not a thing. So anyway, short story long is the ability to help the robots go find the thing that that needs to be found, to me, is the modern information professional's job, and I want to help them get there.
yeah, and I also love I love the approach that we've taken as well of and I don't want to reduce it to features, and I certainly don't want to get into the weeds on any features, but the idea that new capabilities are merely just pushed out and rolled out, that and so a user of the tool goes away on the Friday and they come back in on the Monday, and we've expanded what it is that they can do. We've expanded the simplicity with which they can find what they're looking for as we learn and make the tool better and faster and all these other things, and because we iterate on these things with customer feedback so quickly, the experience that the end user has is that the tool and the experience of using it gets easier and better for them as they go. And I mean, how often can you say that about enterprise software applications? Oh, this just got easier and better. Like, it doesn't happen very much.
For sure. So yeah, and that is our marketing effort
Yeah,
now, and quite frankly, it means that we just need to shift who we're talking to.
yeah,
Like, it's easy to go to a CFO and say, guess what? Here's something that you're going to spend less money on than people, and it's going to have this dramatic impact on your organization. And yeah, then you get to decide, like, how much money you need to now spend in other areas of the business. So it's a tough one, in that everybody's worried about automation and how the robots are going to change people's jobs, but it's also inevitable. So
mhm,
so you got to decide, or am I going to adapt? Am I going to adopt the idea that my job is to make other people better, or are you going to just continue to look inward and say my job is to make sure that that box is properly labeled? And I don't mean to trivialize it. I mean, if you're only looking inward or looking backwards at something and you're trying to protect your domain, that's trouble, because it's hard to justify expense for that.
yeah. And it's that reminds me of something I just read last night. Actually, are you familiar? Do you know what I mean by Amber Mack? I feel like as a Canadian tech person, you kind of have to know who Amber Mack is. She's a longtime tech journalist based in Toronto. I think originally from PEI, and she's fantastic. She's been a tech journalist as long as I've been doing this. And anyway, she's now on the speaker tours and does a lot of conferences and keynotes and stuff. She's a thought leader and she's terrific at it. She was talking a little bit about her early days, and she was kind of comparing it to what she's seeing right now with AI, for example, and the explosion of, oh my God, my job's going to be automated by AI and I'm going to lose my job to AI. And her comment was like, yeah, maybe. So like, learn how to do this stuff. Just like, and her comment was like, just like I kind of had to as a journalist leaving journalism school in 1998 and seeing what was happening even then to journalism, where it's like, oh, we're going to have websites and we're going to push this out onto the web, and the content is going to be created in a reusable way so that we can have it for our newspapers that people buy at the at the corner store, but we're also going to have it on these websites that people go to. And she said, like, I had to, it wasn't part of my plan, I wasn't a techie, but I learned how to program, I learned how to, in her case, do HTML and JavaScript and kind of the early web things that people learned how to do. And she said, look, it's not, that part isn't really different from what's happening with AI now. There's a whole new set of things that people have to learn if they want to kind of keep on top of these things. So if you approach it that way, say, look, there's a whole bunch of new tools, a whole bunch of new capabilities, just like there was in the late 90s or mid to late 90s around this stuff. So start learning it, right? So, her argument was, don't go into it with fear. Like, just dive right in and learn, make mistakes. There's going to be stuff that works. There's going to be stuff that doesn't work. That's cool. Like, you and I both know, if we look back to 1996, 97, 98, Jason, there were tons of mistakes. I was responsible for a lot of mistakes made in those years, but you learn from them, right? So
yeah, the World Wide Web was 5 years
Right.
old. Nobody knew exactly what it was going to be. There was barely a whisper of a PayPal or an Amazon or anything like
or
that. Google,
mobile was like not a
yeah,
thing, right?
yeah, like Google was something that only techies knew about until about 2001, 2002, somewhere in then it started taking off. But we were all enthralled, and we got a sense of page rank and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it takes a while. And I often joke about this, is that, like, in 1993, when the World Wide Web was born, I was on there, you were on there. Like, I was in university at the time, so of course you're on there. And everybody was prophesizing, we're going to do everything on this. Yet it wasn't until sometime between 2006 and 2009 when everybody made their first online purchase or felt comfortable putting their credit card online or something like that. That's 13
Not that
years
long.
for the most fantastic innovation of all time. So I think AI and automation is going to go a little faster. But even if it takes 10 years, it'll still be faster than how the World Wide Web took off, oddly enough. And we feel like this was the most transformative thing that's ever happened.
Looking back on it now, as I'm in resoundingly in Act 3 of my career, I think about it as being what it must have been like to be in the early days of television or something. Like, everybody's completely making it up. There are a bunch of, hucksters and charlatans and but there are also a whole bunch of people that are in love with this new capability, just as I clearly see that there are now with people that are really excited about AI, and they should be excited about it. So
yeah, for sure. I feel like
we did.
went on and
I
on.
love it. I think that's what we do.
Cool. What do you got?
So I'm gonna use one of my two topics today to develop some cheat sheets and crib notes for a blog post that I feel like we need to write at some point, or I need to write. I want to talk about convenience copies, which is, I don't even know that that's a very well known term. So I think maybe if it's not a very well known term, maybe you and I should try to define it for the listener here a little bit. But what we're talking a little bit about when we talk about convenience copies are the copies of usually documents or files that you keep, on a thumb drive or on your phone. I've got, for example, I've got PDFs of my COVID vaccinations on my phone. Not only, I don't have links to them, I don't have them in an app. I've got literally, a PDF for each of the COVID vaccinations I've had for some reason on my phone.
Yeah, you needed them to get into arenas and events or whatever.
I have
for
the
a few
same.
years. Yeah,
I have
totally.
the same thing.
Yeah, and so every app nowadays has somewhere in it an ability to share a thing. I'm going to share a document. There's a big share button usually, or a share icon. I'm going to share this, and usually what you're doing is you're not really sharing the the document or the file. Usually it's a link that gets shared so that the person that you're sharing it with doesn't get a copy of the document. They get a link to the document, and then they can go and get it. That which is great. That's fine. That's been around for a while, and now it's a generally understood thing. Except that the moment you've shared something with somebody, even if you're a good information management citizen and you share a link, the moment you do that, you're sending somebody a link to something that they then have an opportunity to download and keep a local copy of, and that's what we mean by a convenience copy. So, sorry, maybe this is a good place for me to pause, Jason, and say, would you refine the definition of a convenience copy at all, or anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, there's the intent that we should all be disciplined and make sure that the system of record has the only copy of things, because that's good information management and governance. And history has proven over and over again that people don't like that. I'm going to make a copy of it. I'm going to email the document instead of sending you a link. So, I mean, the convenience copy idea just happens, and it's kind of like, just snacking just happens, or skipping going to the gym just happens, or all sorts of things just happen, and you go, yeah, I'm human, like I got free will and I can do all of it's things
Right.
happen. So yeah, so the idea of saying, well, the cure is motivation and discipline and all this kind of stuff equally applies from going to the gym as it does to information
Yeah,
management.
and users of systems are, we've talked a lot, I think, even in this podcast series, about how it's like river down river down a mountainside. Like, it goes around obstacles, it goes around rocks. Users will go around anything to just do the thing that makes it convenient for them. Like, it's given away in the term. Like, it's more convenient for me to save a local copy than to jump through whatever hoops the information managers want me to do, because it's just faster and easier for me to have this local copy. So, okay, so that's all great, and so far there's no controversy there, and I'm not looking to court controversy here, but I do want to propose that, I've seen, and we've developed here at Shiny Docs. I'm super excited about it, and I can't wait to start talking about it more and more with our customers. We have super easy, obvious ways to help companies who have decided on a system of record. You've decided that your system of record is SharePoint, or you've decided that your system of record is Open Text Content Server. Whatever it is, you've decided that you've got a system of record where you want people to really keep their stuff. We have in our treasure trove of goodies an ability to really easily and really obviously outline for the information managers of the world, or whomever, where all those convenience copies live. We can say, oh yeah, you've got the right one in SharePoint, your system of record, but we've found 14 other copies that are floating around in all these other places. And here's the thing that I think needs to pivot, and I think this is different from what we've seen in the past, and certainly what I've seen in the past with customers, is that would be an opportunity in the past for people to make people feel really bad about they're bad at their jobs. They're not being compliant. They should be ashamed of themselves for what they've done. They've put these files on their hard drives or on their phone. No, like I think the pivot that needs to happen, and I think our tool is the tool to help people do it, is to kind of just like own up to the reality of it and say, hey, look, you've done a great job of putting this into a compliant place that doesn't change. It's the system of record. That file is locked down, but you've got 4 other copies of it. You got one over in Outlook. You've got one over on somebody on a file share. You've got one on somebody's phone, that kind of thing. So you could very easily develop some nice, pleasant ways of communicating to the owners of those files to say, hey, just FYI, this file of yours, we know you've got a convenience copy of it. That's okay. In 30 days, in 60 days, in 90 days, we're going to get rid of that, and you should go to this place for it. Give them some bandwidth, give them some time, give them little fair warning, or whatever you want to call it, and say, we'd rather you didn't have a local copy of this. We're not trying to make you feel bad about it, but here you go get it. What are your initial gut reactions?
Well, for sure. Like, I mean, it's so from a governance point of view or whatever, it's, the idea of outlawing this stuff has never worked. It's kind of like saying, be nice to your sister. Right. Of course you should be nice to your sister, but sometimes you aren't. So, and the problem is when you're not, then you're not. Like, I mean, you just have to deal with that. The instruction doesn't matter. It's the outcome that matters. So I think of working with specific customers previously and currently, like when you're talking about controlled nuclear
Right.
information, aviation information, transportation, food
Yeah.
safety. Like these are things that evolve. We learn
Yeah.
things every time that there is any type of change in engineering, anytime that there's any type of change in our understanding of biology, the control information
Mhm.
changes, meaning sometimes the stuff that's in your convenience copy is
Mhm.
outdated, and in some cases dangerously
Dangerously
so.
outdated.
You
Yeah.
know, like the stuff that's in
Right.
that document that you have has a 1 in 100 chance of failure. In the newer version, has a 1 in 1,000 chance of
Yeah.
failure. I want the new
Yeah.
version. So there's a great use case for, it's the idea of, do I have the latest thing in my convenience copy?
Mhm.
It's the old world way is to say, wag the finger, be nice to your sister, go to the gym, and always make sure that you share links and always do that. But people don't do it.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with the reality. And that's something that we've literally done with customers before, where every time a document in the system of record is superseded, we know where every version is. So we send an email to those people and we mark it to them saying, hey,
Yeah.
it's, and in some cases you say, you are dangerously out of
Mhm.
date, and that's like the engineering scenario
It
where
it could
an
cause
improvement has
harm.
been
Yeah.
made. Yeah, or it's there's a softer touch,
Yeah.
whereas that other convenience copy that you have there is not the latest
Yeah.
version. You probably want the latest version.
Yeah.
So these are something that's just should be built in to what I call the zeitgeist, the current operating system for people.
Mm.
And yeah, and what I found historically is like it's the people who are tasked with this saying, no, the only solution is for me to be the authority on what people are allowed to do, and we don't have convenience copies here. And how many times have you heard that when talking to specific
Yeah.
industries? Well, that doesn't
Right.
happen here. And
And
then
then you find
you
them.
talk to actual people who are on the front line working, and they go, of course it happens here. Those guys are
Mhm.
on I guess we're just hiding it from them. So anyway, short story long is, the solution of course is to have a good sense of what your control information
Mhm.
is, like what the important stuff is, so that when a new policy comes out, when a new best practice comes out, everybody is aware of it, so that people don't die. And then separately is to accept the fact that people are going to make those convenience copies, and have a, just as much as your system of record is the authority on the data, you have a practice by which you can push out the
Yeah.
information where it's on somebody's hard drive,
Yeah.
that it's on their mobile device, it's a convenience copy that they keep in their email or
Right.
something like
Right.
that. We do that for people. Yet it's in a sense hard to sell, because a lot of the times we're talking to the information professionals, which wags their finger. No, 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 no.
Right.
People aren't allowed to do that. I'm not going to buy a piece of software that acknowledges the fact that people work outside of my thing. And then we're sitting here going, okay, I mean, I guess we need to talk to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, that's an interesting thought, and I think you're absolutely on track with that. What about the idea that knowing this about your complete inventory of content, knowing where the control documents are, and knowing where the convenience copies are, um, helps to reinforce the investment that you have made in the source of record. Like, in other words, if you are on the IM side and you've made a decision to standardize on SharePoint or OpenText Content Server, or any other number of solutions out there, by knowing this and having the tools with which to communicate to your staff, you can actually strengthen the case for your source of record. Which, like being open and honest about it, a lot of those are under siege at the moment. I think there are a lot of organizations that are looking to spend the cost that they're putting into these in some cases monolithic systems, to store all their data and store all their content as into a single source of truth, or a system of record. And they're being kind of attacked by in the budget cycle, say, do we really need to keep spending this much on all this stuff every year, because it's pretty expensive. And knowing the whole inventory of where everything is, and justifying the kind of management of that, not by wagging the finger, but by by sort of exposing, you're saying, always be nice to your sister. By saying something like that to your son or daughter, you're essentially tipping off to them that you're watching them. I'm watching you too, and I need you to be nicer to your sister. That's essentially what the organization is doing to people who have these convenience copies. Anyway,
Yeah,
I wanted to riff on this because
it,
it's been such a long standing, it's been a forever problem, and I think we have great capabilities to help people with this, but to your point, it's a tough thing to sell if you're talking to the information managers who only want to approach it with a sledgehammer.
well, so oddly enough, and I don't know how we keep doing this, but I think you're making exactly the same point that I made with the first
Is
one.
that right?
Is that when you tie it to the idea that I can make you better as a staff.
Yeah.
So my job isn't to get mad at you for having a convenience copy.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is the default knee-jerk reaction. My job actually is to just understand when you have that and provide you with some value to let you know is, hey, that convenience copy is out of date.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you probably want to update it because of safety, because of you want to be working with the latest stuff. And now I can't. You know what I mean? So if we take it from that perspective,
I love it.
yeah, we can absolutely do this. We're going to make your experience as an end user better. And you just gave the exact antithesis of that, of saying, no, we're going to be the mean parent. That's my job, is to defend the data so that nobody gets any benefit from it. You know what I mean? Like and of course that's provocative, but it's just, it keeps tying back to when you take a focus on
making people's jobs
the
better.
acknowledgement, people do what they do, and they probably have a good excuse. Like I was sitting in a big engineering consulting firm and watching them pound the table, and I'm quietly sitting there because I have a nice little interface for their content management system. And they're pounding their fist going, I don't want to use any of this crap. I make 100% of the revenue for this business. This is the engineers talking. And you guys keep getting in my way. And then swearing happened. And I was sitting there going, wow, this is an uphill battle to try to convince somebody like that of the benefits of sharing a link instead of downloading a local copy. Yeah, I don't even want to engage with that. I'm going to get my head bit off. So that's the reality, is that you've got, whether it's, people are going to do whatever they do, whether they're arrogant, ignorant, or they're right. They're just going to do what they do. And if you can help them do it better, then you win. And if you want to be the police, then you're going to have to fight the whole time. And you're probably not good at fighting, because you don't learn that when you get an information sciences degree. You don't learn how to go to battle against the business. You're always going to lose.
Yeah. And it's amazing. You're right. We did kind of land back on the same place as the first one, in that, like, making people better at their jobs, making them enjoy their jobs more, making them more productive should be, particularly as people are all on the same team. The information management group and the engineers aren't on different teams. They all work for the same organization. So shouldn't they be helping each other? And obviously sometimes in large organizations, there's silos develop and things get adversarial, unfortunately. I love it. I think we're onto something. I'm laughing because I was thinking about how, speaking of provocative, how provocative it would be if I came into work on a Monday and had a notification waiting for me that said, Davey, that copy of that PDF that you've got in C:\Davey stuff, it's out of date. You should go get the real one on SharePoint. I mean, that would be like, weirdly, that would be like, oh, okay, cool. How did you know that? How did you know that I had that?
It was, and I love that our software does that. Discretionary. We're not going to force it on people, but I mean, and back to Steve, it's this morning we were talking about, it's blog articles to help illuminate, we're Shiny Docs, to shine a light on these good ideas. Not only to, of course, get search engine optimization and get more eyeballs on Shiny Docs, but the idea of we are thought leaders, yet we keep these good ideas a secret. So if somebody's listened until, minute 31 on our podcast, then they get to know this stuff. But in the absence of that, unless Davey writes his blog article,
that's
good
why
idea
we're talking
might be
about
a secret.
it. So I got good stuff to write now, Steve. Yeah. What do you think, Steve? Yeah,
I love
Steve's on board.
Yeah,
it.
cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So Davey, you got one more? We got a
I do,
couple more
yeah,
minutes. Yeah.
yeah. I've got the other one that I wanted to raise, and this is like a little bit of a this is more a cultural thing that's happening right now, and I'm not even really sure where I personally land on. I've been following this stuff. This is all really recent. This is happening like right now this week with Meta. You know, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Zuckerberg's Meta company has just quietly. I'm gonna make a provocative discussion. I'm gonna start a provocative discussion about a feature flag. They've kind of quietly introduced a little feature, a little toggle that you can turn off or on in Threads and Instagram. Interestingly, not in Facebook. They introduced it in Threads and Instagram. This little thing that is on by default. You have to go in and turn it off. That says, "Don't show me anything that seems political." So, and you know, in their defense, you know, they're really probably responding to. Sorry, don't show me anything. I should be very specific. Don't show me anything political by somebody that I don't follow. If I've chosen to follow somebody, I've chosen that that person's a buddy, and I'm interested in what they're saying. Then yeah, show me that stuff. But don't show me anything that seems kind of political, unless I'm following them. And then they chose to make that a default setting that people are now going in and actively either turning off or on depending on what they're interested in. If I'm approaching this from the point of view of the, you know, the software world, and you know, I view this as like a feature flag, and I've got user feedback saying, gosh, I just hate getting inundated with political stuff. You know, all I want pictures of birthday cakes because I'm really into birthday cakes and cupcakes and things like that. Don't show me election stuff when all I care about is Instagrams of carrot cake and things like that. So on some level, I kind of get that, but you know, the part that kind of scares me a little bit about this one is the impact that this has on like the actual dissemination of the news. Because where does, you know, you've got the news of what's happening in an election year on top of that in the States, and you've got a new feature flag that suddenly says, "Nah, don't show any of that stuff." You know, is this you know, some subversive attempt to keep people ignorant of what's going on, or is it simply a user setting that's trying to make the user experience better so that I can just see pictures of chocolate cakes and cookies and things like that? Do you have a
Yeah.
strong
Yeah.
view?
Oh, of course I
That's
do.
why I
I
brought
mean,
it up.
politics has entered the chat, and I'm going to try to avoid like a political
Yeah.
response. Very much, I'm going to leave the Facebook setting as yeah, new political ideas that I don't follow, unsubscribe. But I will say it is. It used to be back a long time ago, back when I was a kid. You know, we'd get the
Yep.
newspaper, and there were some people who read the newspaper, and there's some people who didn't. And the newspaper didn't know whether or not it was, you know, like somewhere a little left leaning, somewhere a little right leaning, somewhere straight up the middle. In some cases, like in Canada, and there was laws back then that said in the newspaper, in media, you are not allowed to knowingly lie. Somehow we repealed those laws, which is kind of
Mhm.
interesting. It's kind of a free speech thing saying anybody's allowed to lie. So I mean, it was really hard to get any information to
Mhm.
anybody back in the olden days. So I mean, you'd have like political campaigns, way more people out knocking on doors and
Yep.
talking to people and all that kind of stuff and collecting information. So things tended to be a lot more centrist. Um, and at the same time, too, like I mean, we were promoted as being sports are great, corporations are great. You know, like burn fossil fuels, that's fine.
Mhm.
And like there was all this promotion of this
Mhm.
stuff that it's, you know, and again, politics has entered the chat. And then now all of a sudden when the internet happened, then, you know, all the people who played Dungeons and Dragons who were considered, you're nerds that who you're not out playing soccer during the recess, you're like nerds playing whatever. Then all of a sudden everybody found each other and went, holy crap, there's way more of us than there are the jocks or whatever. So now sports is this weird,
Niche. It's like a
kind of
little, like a
a niche
weird niche
thing.
thing.
It's this niche thing, and there's all sorts of, like it's way
Right.
bigger to be into video
Right.
games and all this kind of massive. It's
Right.
it's bigger than movies now. It's video games and stuff like that. So I feel like it's kind of attached to what you're talking about, is that we have this weird fire hose now of
Yeah.
information that just gets pointed at you whether you like it or
Yeah.
not. So the idea of you being able to unsubscribe from the fire
Yeah.
hose I think it's kind of a
Yeah.
good idea. It is, like, get back to kind of
Yeah.
centrist news, who's just, as far as we know, here's the facts. As far as we know, we're not lying. I mean, propaganda has always existed, but I mean, knowingly lie and, having an angle are slightly different things. And I feel like this might be just a gentle attempt at that, because Facebook and Meta, they've gotten so much crap, and they've been subverted
Right.
by third parties who exploit their platform.
Yeah.
So I'm not against the idea of the, like, putting up a
Yeah.
little bit of a barrier, so you're not inundated with, whatever political thing
Yeah.
that challenges your belief all the time, because that just makes people angry and polarized.
Well, I'll go a step further and say I think we might be 3 for 3 on connecting these things together, because once again, I feel like this one comes back to user experience. Like, I'm not. I gave the example of cakes and cupcakes and things. I'm not a cupcake guy. I'm not a cake guy. But what I am really interested in, I don't know whether you know this or not about me, but I'm really interested in bicycles, and not just bicycles. It's like way more niche than that. Like, I'm interested in the bicycles that were built between 1985 and 1992, and those are and all the bikes and the parts that I'm super interested in. And I have an Instagram account. My Instagram account has got mostly stuff, other than some stuff with my kids and that kind of thing, mostly stuff associated with bikes and bike parts that were made between like 85 and 92, which was like the birth of like the original sort of mountain biking stuff, right?
Yeah, Shimano Diore on the specialized rock hopper titanium.
100%.
Yes, yeah, I got it.
So
Yep, I know the
I'm
lingo.
viewing
Yep.
this as like an amazing feature, because my experience of using something like Instagram or Threads is all about, like, tell me about the cool rear derailleur that you found in some flea market in Boise, Idaho, because it's mint and it's, it looks like it just got off this mountain bike from 1998 or 1988. Don't inundate me with your, political stuff. So I think I've landed where you are too. And I think it ties back into what we're talking about around user experience, where it's like, just make this a great experience for me and I will use the heck out of your solution. If you make this a lousy experience for me, I'm gone, and maybe, I mean, that's the other thing too that occurs to me, is that maybe this is also a response. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that there's been a pretty significant exodus from some of the major social media platforms. And if not an outright exodus, the actual kind of visit counts and duration in the app, duration on the site type metrics show that it's pretty low, right? That people are becoming disenchanted increasingly with social media. So,
well, yeah, like, I mean, mental health matters, and unfortunately, social media, because of click algorithms, people have stronger reactions to things that make them angry or agitated.
yep.
And then they tend to click on them, and then they tend to polarize, and the algorithm just keeps forcing them in that direction. And fine, like, I mean, in some cases, people are happy when they're miserable, but for the most part, like, I mean, it costs us more in healthcare, it costs us more in our ability to perform our work function properly. There's a million reasons why polarizing things that make you angry, it's, let's limit
Yep.
them. Let's not just make that a fire hose of that. So the fact that people are discretionarily leaving is a healthy thing.
Yeah.
But and perhaps that's why, Facebook, they kind of own social media still, even though, like, there's lots of people who have had their exodus. It's still a pretty
Oh
big
yeah, for
platform.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's a sign of the times, that it's like, you know what, rather than having people completely unsubscribe,
Just make it a better
let's give
experience for them.
yeah, let's turn the fire hose off
Yeah.
and have them less
I
angry.
feel like there's a joke in here about LinkedIn and how, how weird it is. Everyone, I mean, you're a big LinkedIn guy. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. how weird it is when somebody does put an overtly political message into LinkedIn. It's like kind of like nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to go anywhere near it. So,
Oh yeah,
LinkedIn has kind of, they don't need this setting. They don't need the users
yeah.
mostly police themselves on that. And I kind of get why that is.
Oh, I love the toxic positivity of
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I mean, it's your birthday, hooray, new idea, hooray, angry idea. It's like,
Not,
yeah, I'm just
yeah.
gonna move
Engagement
on.
on that's
Yep.
pretty low. So
Don't
yeah,
engage.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love it. So those are the two
awesome.
things I
Oh,
had. The most recent one around the meta change, the feature flag, was something that was just like hot off the presses. So I wanted to chat about it today. So yeah,
yeah,
super good.
love it. Awesome. Well, what do you think, Steve? How did we do?
I think that was fantastic. And it's unfortunate we don't have another hour because Davey, that second topic, I
Oh
could
yeah, is that right?
do a whole podcast with you just
Have
on
you been
that.
following all the stuff around? Like people, the journalists and the news are freaking out over this because it's like, yeah,
It's
yeah,
really interesting to me on a couple notes, and I'll try to be concise just because I'm aware of time, but that Facebook doesn't have it because Facebook obviously is the one that could benefit
right,
from it the most. Because I think it's really interesting as like an Instagram power user, I'll
right,
call myself. Like I'm not seeing, like I don't get political stuff in my
right,
algorithm as it is. Like to your reference about cakes
right,
and cupcakes, I'm only seeing
right,
cakes and cupcakes. Like I see largely what I want to see, which is really fascinating because if you looked at my YouTube algorithm, it's completely opposite. It's like MSNBC, the Young Turks, all this, left leaning
right,
kind of like
yeah.
political stuff. So I find it interesting that that's a feature in Instagram, whereas it's
It's
almost
the wrong place for it.
not a preventive. Yeah, it's not a
Yeah.
preventative. In my mind, I think it's not a preventative measure. It's a
Mm.
jumping off point. Because I think to be at that point, you had to have gotten
Okay.
yourself there. You have to be
Interesting.
following political accounts. You have to be searching political hashtags. And then maybe there's a
Too
time where you're
much.
like, yeah, it's too much. I'm getting too polarized. Everything's making
Yeah.
me angry. I
Yeah.
want off. So I think to me, it seems more of a feature from that
Interesting.
standpoint that it's not necessarily going to prevent people from seeing political content, but I've seen too much. I don't want to see anymore.
That's
I'm going to
interesting.
turn it off. I think that's how
Yeah.
it reads
Yeah.
to me.
It sounds healthy to me,
Yeah.
Steve. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a great chat. We covered a lot of bases, and I've got the start of a great new blog, something or other. So that's good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, can't wait to promote that.
Cool.
Great. Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Great. See you
See you
next
later.
week, gentlemen. Enterprise Intelligence is a Shiny Docs podcast with Jason Cassidy and Davey Slimmin, produced by Stephen Schuntz. Copyright 2024. If you would like to learn more about how Shiny Docs can make it easy to organize your content, protect your data, and make your users happy, visit shinydocs.com today.